Hey everyone, welcome to this Gen AI crash course. This is a series designed to give you practical hands-on knowledge about generative AI, OpenAI, LangChain, vector database, RAG, and prompt engineering. So if you are a student looking to build a strong portfolio, or if you're a working professional trying to upskill yourself for career growth, then this series is for you. In the first video, we are going to do a deep dive into OpenAI, how it works, how can you use it to build AI applications and all. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid understanding of OpenAI's ecosystem and how to integrate it into your projects. What we are going to build today in OpenAI, what we are building today is the foundation for everything that follows in this crash course. So without any delay, let's get started. VS Code. Let's start by setting up the environment. To set it up, first we have to import the API token. To import API token, I'm going to store it in a file called .env file, and then I'll import it from there. Along with API token, I'll also import my host and my model name. Let's start by creating a .env file here. I'll say token equal to abcd. Now to import that into my VS Code, I'll be using this library called .env library. I'll run this function which will load whatever is in the .env file, and then this is how I'm going to print and see. Here you can see it is abcd. In my .env, if I add numbers, if I run all of it, it is not going to reflect because I need to restart my kernel in VS Code. It's kind of a disadvantage when you're working with .env files. There you can see. Okay, so along with my token name, I'm going to put my host and my model. This is my model. It's completely random values. I'll say this is my host, this is my model. Run all. It's not going to work because I need to restart my kernel. Okay, now if I run everything, I should be able to get all of my token, host, and models loaded into these variables. Now that I've got all these three ready, let's go ahead and connect to OpenAI. Before we do that, let me tell you what exactly these three are. Token is of course the API token. Host, you don't have to pass host if you're working directly with OpenAI, but because I'm working with Azure OpenAI, I need to pass the host here. And model is the name of the LLM model that you want to use. If you want to use 3.5 Turbo, you can give that as a model name. If you want to go with GPT-4 or Mini, you can give that as a model name. It's completely up to you. Okay, let's start by connecting to OpenAI. First, we need to do a pip installation of the library. This is how you can do it, but because I've already installed it, I'm not going to run this part. You can import OpenAI object. Sorry, you can import the OpenAI module, and then you can create an object of the OpenAI. This is where you're going to pass the API token and the host. Once you have this connection ready with you, you can start using it almost like ChatGPT. This is the most important piece of code that you have to understand. So here we are passing the name of the model, and in the messages parameter, this is where you're going to send the actual input. So whatever you type in ChatGPT, this is where it goes. And we also have a couple of other parameters here called max, tokens, and temperature. We'll take a deep look into both of these and also a lot more other parameters in a bit. But for now, just let's use these default settings. Now, if I restart my kernel and then clear all outputs, run everything, I should get a response to this question. Okay, sorry, my bad. I forgot to change these to the actual values. Let me switch them into the original values. Save, close, clear all. Let's restart. Now if I click on run all, there you go, we got the output. So for my question, hello, how are you? I got the output as hello, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I'm a large language model, so I don't have feelings, blah, blah, blah. So we got all of this part. So we are now able to retrieve answer. The messages, I'm passing the role as user. There are a couple of other things that I can pass here. One that I can pass all the time is system. So let's see how it looks like. So it's the same piece of code again, but this time I've added one more element here. The role is system and the content is you are a helpful assistant who always talks in all caps. So system is the system level instructions that you're passing to your large language model. So here I'll say tell me a joke, and it has to follow these instructions before it generates the response. So if I click on run, you can see I got the output. Okay, here's one. Why did the scarecrow win an award? It's a very bad joke, by the way. So we got a joke, but it is in all caps because I've given that in the system instructions. Along with system and user, I can also pass something called as assistant, but we usually don't pass it as the last element. The last element in this messages list should always be user. That is how the LLM knows what question to answer. Okay, so this is good, but let's try to understand both of these parameters. We have something called max tokens and temperature. Let's see what these are. If I give the max tokens as 5, here I've given 50, so I got this long output. It is using 50 tokens at max, but if I give the max tokens as 5, that's all. Okay, here's after this, it cannot go anything beyond these two words because I've limited the maximum number of tokens that it can use. If I give it as, let's say, 10, okay, here's one. Why did the? Uh, Beyond this, it cannot predict any new word. So that is how we can use max tokens. So let's say if I give this a value of 1000 for all of my LLM outputs, I want the token consumption to be below 1000 per request. It should not go beyond that because we are essentially paying per token. So if it is generating something which is really, really huge, it will cost us a lot. So we can restrict the token usage in this way. Now comes temperature. Let me give a temperature of 0.1 and let's run this. Okay, so it gave out a joke. Why did the scuba diver's wife leave him? Because he was always coming up short. Ha ha ha. Okay. So we got the joke of scuba diver. I'll give the temperature as 0.1 again without changing anything. Now if I run the same one, it's still the same. I'll run it again. It is still the same. There's no change even by a single word here. But if I give a very high temperature value, you can see I got a different output. Why did the coffee file a police report? Because it got mugged. This is a completely same joke, but this time we've got slightly extra. So what happens in temperature is if you give a very low temperature value, your outputs are going to be very much similar all the time. But if you give a very high temperature value, then for the same input, you will get a slightly different output every time you ask the same question. These are the two of the most important and mostly configured parameters when we are working with OpenAI. The third one, of course, being the messages. So here we know that this is how we can use OpenAI to get answer to one question. But what about conversations? If I want to ask anything about my previous question, or if I want to maintain a to and fro conversation, how can I do that? Let's see how to do that. Here I've got one more piece of code, and here you can see I'm giving the role system, you're a helpful assistant. Content is who won the World Series in 2020. this is my assistant content, which means this is the output that I got from my LLM model. So whatever output I got from my LLM, I'll store it in the content of assistant. And then I'm asking one more question. Say it again, but in all caps. If I run this, you can see it gave out the exact same answer, but in all capitals. That is because it is able to understand the previous conversations. So here we are basically mimicking the behavior of a conversation. So if I want to have 20 different conversations, I can put them here in between and then I can ask a question. But what if we want to make this dynamic? So for example, if I'm having a to and fro conversation from LLM, I can ask a question. I should be able to ask a question, get LLM output, add that to the conversation, and put one more question and send that new question. So let's go ahead and make all of this part dynamic with the help of a loop. With this code, here I'm creating a list called as conversations. I'm passing the role as system, and this is the content. You're a helpful AI assistant who need to answer users' question using the provided relevant content. It's very simple. Next, I've got a function here called invoke LLM, which is going to take a user input. It will create this dictionary here, user question, and I'm just using an F string here. Once I create this dictionary, I'll append that into my conversations list. Then I'm passing that to my chat completion. Maximum tokens 50, temperature 0.7. It's very simple, basic as it is. And whatever LLM output I got is going to be appended to conversations again. So I'm creating one more dictionary here and then I'm appending that into conversations. And of course, I'm printing the output as well. So if I run this one, okay, so my list got created, my function got defined. Let's go ahead and start asking a bunch of questions. In which year is GTA 6 coming out? I'm afraid I have some disappointing news for you. As of my knowledge cutoff, there is an official release date announced for Grand Theft Auto 6. I'm giving the maximum tokens as 50, so it couldn't answer beyond this one. Let's ask one more question. Say it again in the form of a 3-line poem. No release date in sight to share. GTA 6 launch year still unclear. Rockstar's silence leave fans to wait and stare. Okay, so we got this poem, but again, I'm not mentioning anything about GTA 6 here, but because we are using a loop, because we are using that as a function, it is able to retrieve previous conversations. Let's see one more example of this one and then we'll move on to the next module. What was my original question? You can see your original question was, in which year is GTA 6 coming out? Word to word, that is exactly what I asked. So in this way, we can store all of the conversations. If I print my conversations list, or let me do for I in print I. Here you can see role is system, user, assistant, user, assistant, user, assistant. So these two roles, user and assistants, they have to alternate all the time. And system should always be in the very first position, which is 0 index. And whenever you are sending the conversations to LLM, make sure that the last element is always user. Only then ChatGPT or OpenAI or any LLM will be able to answer the question. Okay. So here you can see the actual question that I asked is, in which year is GTA 6 coming out? We know that GTA 6 is going to come out in 2025, but the LLM model was not trained on this information. Whatever training data they had during the training part, there was no news of GTA 6 by then. So this training data that was used for this particular LLM had no information about GTA 6 release date. So it has no way of knowing the actual year or the actual date. To handle this kind of situations, what we usually do is we take information and then we pass that information along with the question. So let's start by giving information. Here I'll paste one more piece of code. I'll remove this part. Okay, it's the same conversations again. I'm just creating a list. I'm giving the role as system, content is this. But this time for the invoke function, I'm passing content. I'll say relevant content and then user question. I'm combining both of them in my f string. I'll create that as a message dictionary. I'll append that into my conversations. I'll pass that here. I've given my max tokens as 256, temperature as 0.7, and my LLM output. The rest of the things, they're all pretty much the same. But in the content, I'll say Rockstar has released the trailer of GTA 6 on 2020, sorry, in 2024 and has announced the game will be out in 2025. Now my question is, in which year is GTA 6 coming out? As you can imagine, uh, sorry, append. Now, as you can see, we got the answer. GTA 6 is coming out in 2025. Let me give a higher token, higher temperature. You can see, according to the latest information, GTA 6 is scheduled to be released in 2025. So higher temperature, slightly different answer every single time. Lower temperature value, exact same answer all the time. So this is how you can make use of OpenAI and then maintain conversations and get LLM outputs. If you have learned something new today, hit that like button, comment below with any questions that you have, and also subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for your support.